the CERN Council in Spain for many, many years.
Okay, I would like to start this presentation by congratulating the organizers, including myself, for scheduling in this conference a session to celebrate the 60th anniversary of CERN. The previous speakers have summarized some of the great achievements of the organization and, at the same time, have given some hints on how the continuation of this very successful endeavor might be pursued. In 2014, we are also to a 2-month degree of accuracy celebrating the 30th anniversary of the return of Spain to CERN. The fact that Spain has joined CERN twice was, according to Sir Christopher Lewin Smith, an indisputable proof of the love of Spain towards the European laboratory. What I propose today is to give a tour around the main events that high-energy particle physics in Spain has underwent in the last 50 years. In a sense, I will be paying tribute to some of the many colleagues that contributed to create and consolidate a scientific discipline in our country. And at the end, I will present a brief picture of where I think that we stand and what are going to be our main concerns and the big challenges for the future. Up to some extent, this recollection will be somehow biased, fairly much affected by my own involvement in this adventure. And I apologize for all possible unintentional oversights and inaccuracies. And now, back to the light business. Well, I think that it is fair to say that activities related with the field of particle physics started in Spain at the beginning of the 60s. But I think that it is appropriate to recall that in the early 60s, Spain was a country with very weak tradition in modern physics, low level of teaching of modern physics at the university, no experimental facilities, and a rather fragile industrial and technological infrastructures. We had the chance at the beginning of the 60s to have some professors who thought that teaching modern physics was really an important thing. And in particular, these 3 gentlemen, 2 of them, they are no longer with us, Galindo, Pascual, and Indurain, they lay the foundations of theoretical physics, in particular of theoretical particle physics. In particular, Indurain was really very instrumental in the development of the field in Spain, and he became the first Spanish physicist member of the CERN Scientific Policy Committee. I can say that 50 years later, theoretical physics in Spain has become a large, prestigious, and well-recognized community at the international level. There are well-established groups in Barcelona, Granada, Madrid, Santiago de Compostela, Valencia, and Zaragoza do outstanding research in frontier fields in particle physics. For the experimental branch of this discipline, the startup was really difficult. And we had tremendous difficulties in order to start the consolidation process of this scientific discipline in our country. There were 2 places, one in Madrid, in the Junta de Energía Nuclear, which is now called FIEMAT, which is a major laboratory. It was the Spanish nuclear agency, in which some activity related to particle physics was started. Some fellowships were granted to some young students, and that was really a startup of the development of this discipline in this institution. And I think that basically at the same time, in Valencia, in the Institute of Optics, Daza Valdés, Professor Català started also some work related with particle physics. In this picture, we have a Professor Català on the right discussing with one of his senior collaborators, Professor Villar, who started the group in Santiago under the inquisitionary glance of Howard Chapman. One of the things that I said that they did, the gentleman, was to provide the means for some of us to go to the foreign laboratories, and some of us, I'm here with Álvaro de Rújula, on our way to CERN in September 1965. We started to profit a couple of years later of being at CERN as fellows from the organization or from some Spanish institution. And because what happened years later, some of us decided to stay a little bit longer out of Spain. And I am here with Nick Samios and with my good friend, Tom Ferber. Tony Ferrer, also for other reasons, had to move away from Spain and did a large part of his career in France. And also Juan Antonio Rubio, who was really very instrumental for the development of particle physics in Spain. He also spent some time at CERN. The reason why some of us were forced to extend our training period in foreign laboratories was because at the end of 1968, our political authorities announced that it was not worth to stay at CERN any longer. And that for us, for the very small community that we had managed to build at the end of the 60s, it was a major blow. In any case, since being at CERN for several years, some of us, we were able to establish very good relationships with some of the key people at that time at CERN. For instance, Charles Peyrou, who was the head of the track chamber division, with Lucien Montané and with Rafael Armenteros, who were able to get invitations to participate in some experiments in the exactly 81 centimeter bubble chamber, and also in experiments at the 2-meter bubble chamber. In fact, we were invited also to propose an experiment in this facility, and I was the first Spanish physicist who became a spokesperson of a CERN experiment in 1973. With some funding, some institutional support, and recycling some material that we got from CERN, we were able to get some facilities working in Madrid and also in Valencia, and also, and that was the most important part of this initial period, to recruit excellent students. 3 of them are in these pictures, and I think that they are sitting today here in the auditorium. One is Marcos Terrada, the other Enrique Fernandez, and the other Fernando Barreiro, who have done really excellent scientific careers. The picture here was taken with Professor Ting in 1997 in Las Ventas, which is the bullfight arena in Madrid. As everybody knows, something is really a very talented aficionado to bullfights. With some additional support, our group in Madrid was able to grow in size and expertise, and by the end of the 70s, we were able to build a large Cherenkov counter that was installed in the European hybrid spectrometer. That was the first contribution of Spain to a facility operating at CERN. One of the things that we did in the 70s, following the instructions of Montané and the example of the Rencontre de Morion, it was to organize and in what we call the International Quintet Meeting on Fundamental Physics, that took place in 1973 for the first time in Formigal, in the Spanish Pyrenees. 25 years later, we repeated the excursion to Formigal, and here are some survivors. One of them is the late Francisco Indurain. The purpose of this meeting was to create a forum in which this small, reduced community of experimental and theoretical physics will be able to discuss items of common interest, and moreover, to invite well-recognized scientists from abroad to teach to the new generations of young scientists. The meeting, for some 10 years, was funded by FIEMAT, but as the community kept growing, the meeting was organized by groups in all the groups of physicists in the new universities and research centers that had joined working at CERN, and it has been touring basically all Spain, and next year we will be celebrating the 43rd edition. In the 80s, I think that we started the process of partial consolidation and growth. In 1981, for instance, Professor Ting invited us to join the Mark J experiment and Petra, and we started then a collaboration with the DESI laboratory in Germany. 2 years ago, students from the University of Barcelona joined also Petra, and also I think that has been important, this startup has been important for the continuation of their scientific careers. Both of them, they hold now important positions in the two groups at the universities in Barcelona. The same year, we got an invitation also from Professor Ting to join the L3 experiment, but that was the time in which the letters of intent were submitted to the LEP committee. But probably the most important thing that happened at the beginning of the 80s took place in November 1983, when the king signed, Juan Carlos I, signed the decree that officially represented the end, the return of Spain to CERN. And in this picture, you see a group of Spanish personnel belonging to the CERN staff at the time that the Spanish flag was hoisted at CERN. Álvaro de Rújula is watching in the back if the people behave properly on this important occasion. In 1984, when CERN was celebrating the 30th anniversary, the King Juan Carlos and his family attended few celebrations at CERN. And in this picture, Rafael Armenteros, an obstinate Republican, is explaining to the Queen and her daughters the virtues of CERN and the relevance of basic research. Excuse me. The King, Juan Carlos, has visited CERN in a second occasion, that was in 2004, on the occasion of the 50th anniversary of CERN. The other important thing that took place at the beginning of the 80s was the approval of the steering plan for high-energy physics. That was an initiative of Juan Antonio Rubio, which I repeat, played a very important role in the consolidation and the growing of the Spanish community in particle physics, and few of us, we participated in the drafting of this document. And it was Rojo, a physicist who was a key person in the Ministry of Science and Education, who gave the green light to approve this steering plan. The consequences of having a steering plan was, on one side, the consolidation with additional resources for several of the groups, the creation of new groups, but moreover, it was really a prototype for the National R&D Plan, which finally was approved in 1986. It had the peculiarity for those days that it implemented a novel review process by external referees and set up the first research computer network for academic purposes, the so-called finite. Clearly, the return of Spain set up the priorities for our community, and it was clear from the beginning that the largest undertaking in the mid of the 80s should be the participation in the LEP program. Our groups, Spanish groups, they participated from the beginning in 3 experiments, Delphi, L3, and Aleph. And we were able, with this institutional support, to make a visible contribution to the construction of the experiments. In particular, at FIEMAT, we built part of the muon spectrometer, and this is the group that we put together with Ulrich Becker and Juan Antonio Rubio, who were really the persons, the driving forces for this project. In Barcelona, they constructed the luminosity monitor and the Falco data acquisition system, and in Delphi, the forward electromagnetic calorimeter and the time of flight detector. Clearly, the fact that Ferrer, after so many years in France, came back to Valencia, Enrique Fernández to Santander, was very important for the development of these 2 groups. In this picture, Tony Ferrer is explaining to the then Prince of Asturias all the electronic details of one of the detectors that was built in Valencia. Fernando Barreiro, who had spent a lot of time working in DESI, in the Petra accelerator, decided to continue from Madrid his work in Germany, in DESI, and then after Pluto he joined TASO, and he continued the career working in Zeus. He was able, in a very short period of time, to create, to organize extremely competitive, high-quality group. It was María José García Borge who, in 1984, started an activity in low-energy atomic and nuclear physics, working in Isolde, an initiative that was later joined by the group of Valencia. And in 1985, Julio and Ángel Morales, who unfortunately are no longer with us, they decided to revamp an obsolete railway tunnel under the Spanish Pyrenees, and to create there a small laboratory to study rare processes. It was really a very difficult endeavor, and 20 years later, this new laboratory, very close to this railway tunnel, has been inaugurated and now is in the process of commissioning the experiments we will make the experimental program. Our group at FIEMAT in 1986 joined the UA1 experiment, and in 1987, Victoria Fonseca from the University Complutense of Madrid started an activity on high-energy gamma rays, the HEGRA experiment in the Canary Island, in La Palma, the Roque de los Muchachos. During those years, we did try to discuss how to consolidate this activity in Spain. We were able to create the division of particle physics, high-energy particle physics at the Royal Spanish Physical Society. We have been holding regularly meetings during almost 20 years, and our idea has been always to create a structure that will be stable and will protect us against the difficult times, for instance, the difficult times that we have been experiencing during all these years. What has happened in the last 25 years? I think that to some extent, we have obtained visibility in the community, recognition, and moderate success. And by moderate success, I think that we have made some progress, has been accomplished, but clearly there is plenty of work ahead. one of the first, of the most important priorities at the beginning of the 90s was the scientific exploitation of the lab data in the 3 experiments that we were involved. But the new groups, in particular Santiago de Compostela, they have their own ideas, their own initiatives. They got involved in the spin-muon collaboration and also in the Dirac experiment. And the group in Zaragoza started to work in the CAST experiment for solar actions. The same thing was true for the other group in Barcelona, in the University of Barcelona. They decided to join the HERA-B experiment at DESI, and a consortium of experiments in various places in Spain. They joined in 2004 and TOF. Another important step in this process of growing and consolidating the community was due to Teresa Rodrigo, which after spending some time in UA1, went to CDF, spent there several years, and when she came back, she organized a group in Santander, and this group joined CDF in 1999. Later on, the group in Barcelona and FIMAT, we joined also CDF in 2003 and 2005. There were some more activities being done at the beginning of this century, and nevertheless, at the end of the 90s, at the beginning of this century, our highest priority was the participation in the LHC project. I think, were instrumental in getting our firms involved in the construction components of the accelerators. And in fact, out of the 90 or 95 large industrial contracts, the Spanish companies were awarded with 5 contracts. One of them was the fabrication of 1/3 of the cryostats for the superconducting dipoles, of the order of 20 or 25% of the components of the cryogenic line. That was really difficult times, as Lena certainly recall. The construction of the civil engineering 0.5 for CMS, and the fabrication in Spain of the order of 2,000 small superconducting corrector magnets for the LHC. The groups participated at the beginning in the construction of the 3 experiments, Atlas, CMS, and LHCb. Later on, there was a small group from Santiago and from FIMAT, which has been participating and is participating in the data processing of the ALICE experiment. One thing that we did, and that is the work for which it was essential, Luis Miralles, it was the participation in the common funds on both Atlas and CMS, and the selection of items for these common projects, and one of them was the construction of the cryostats for the Atlas superconducting toroids, and also our companies were able to fabricate the central part of the Hadron calorimeter on behalf of Fermilab. And in this picture, Peter Jenny was explaining to the Minister of Industry the relevance of the work which has been done by the company FCM in Asturias for this contribution to the common projects of both Atlas and CMS. Luis Miralles was also, together with Matteo Cavalli, the driving forces of the construction of the tile calorimeter in Barcelona, and also Ferrer and his friends of part of this calorimeter in Valencia. In Valencia also an effort was made to start a new project on silicon detectors, build a large clean room, and were able to fabricate, test, and validate components of the silicon tracker detector of Atlas. The group at the University of Madrid built one of the 2 electromagnetic encaps, and in FIEMAT we put together a very large team, and we constructed a large part of the central muon barrel detector. Santander, Barcelona participated also, Santiago de Compostela in CMS and the LHCb. And one of the things that at least for me, has been a source of great satisfaction, was the initiative taken by Manuel Delfino from Barcelona to organize the setting up of a Tier 1 center in Barcelona, the Puerto de Información Científica, who has been a joint endeavor of our institute in Madrid and the Generalitat of Catalonia. Since then, we have been participating in the commissioning of the detectors, data taking, processing, data analysis, results, and upgrades. We have extended our activities to the world of cosmic ray, thanks to the initiative of Manel Martinez and his colleagues in the University Autónoma of Barcelona, later joined by many other groups, also in AMS, in Antares, in Auger, and since the beginning we are part of the CTA consortium. I don't refrain for showing this transparency. There was an initiative that was started the late 80s, beginning of the 90s, the construction of the Tauchan factory facility in Spain that didn't materialize, but the collateral effect was the approval of the Alba synchrotron in Barcelona in 2002, which has started operation in 2010. In cosmology, we also have several projects launched by particle physicists from various groups. The same thing applies to neutrinos, to dark matter physics, and also most of the groups are very much involved in R&D for future detectors and colliders. Where we stand? Well, if we compare what was the situation on experimental high-energy physics in Spain in 1984, two groups of medium size and another group of very small size, and the situation today, we could conclude that we had moderate success. I think that we have succeeded in having a relevant participation in the most important areas of the CERN experimental programs and in other international programs. We have diversified the field, the discipline. We have worked together with many industrial firms, and we have been training hundreds of scientists, engineers, and technicians. The key for moderate success, I think, has been the support that we have got in all this year, not only from CERN, but also from DESI and from some other well-recognized foreign laboratories. But to me, an important item, an important ingredient on this process of getting better has been that the younger generations are better than the old ones. And that was clearly put it with words by Francis Bacon. Men of age object too much, consult too long, adventure too little, repent too soon, and seldom drive business to the full period, but content themselves with a mediocrity of success. That is, I think that this is another exaggeration, but it has a point of truth. Also, I think that we have to recognize that during these 30 years of membership to CERN, we had an important institutional support, particularly for the national program. And during 25 years, using Michelin terminology, we went from a humble fork to a two-star category. Unfortunately, in the last 6 or 7 years, we are going the way back. However, the fork, I think that is of a better quality than the fork that we had in the year 84. In any case, we still have a long way to go. The institutional support has had really very important things for the discipline. One of them I already mentioned was the national program for high energy physics, the Ramon y Cajal programs. They have created 120 temporary positions. The idea was to convert this temporary position in tenure track positions. Due to the crisis, I don't think that this has been fully accomplished. They have created a program to give particularly to excellent groups like Barcelona and the Institute for Theoretical Physics in Madrid, substantial additional funding. There have been specific funding for some well-defined initiatives, like the one in Canfranc, the one in the Canary Islands, and the creation of the CEPAN Center for Particle, Astroparticle, and Nuclear Physics, which has created since 2007 of the order of 150 temporary positions. But we have concerns, and one of the most important is that we went through important budgetary cuts since 2010. At the research units, in particular at FIEMAT and CSIC, and also in the national program. In the first case, I will say that these cuts have been very large. At the level of the national program, I think that they have been large. And also, there is a very uncertain future for CEPAN. And on top of that, the administration has becoming really difficult with unbearable bureaucratic loads. For me, and for some of my senior colleagues, the largest concern is that there are no positions for researchers with excellent scientific careers. And we have the danger of losing in the coming years very high quality human resources. And that will be an irretrievable loss of our most precious patrimony. That will be really a huge damage for the field and for science in general. There are pending issues in which I think that the community can help to get things a little bit better, to strengthen coordination, to enforce prioritization, to improve management. And also I think that we all together must do a major effort to get CEPAN, this prototype national center, consolidated. 2 words about Spain at CERN. I have put together here some figures. Spain is the 5th contribution to CERN with 8.3%, and these are the fraction of Spanish people in the various classes of the CERN staff. I think that these figures are significantly better than the figures that we had 10 years ago, and I will profit from this occasion to thank to the management of CERN, in particular the present one, for the effort that they have been made in the last 6 years in order to get these figures better. The most positive figure is precisely this one concerning the fellows. We have 13% of the total number of fellows in the organization, and moreover, the number of applications, in spite of the current situation, is growing. People think that these figures are not enough, and they might be right, but what it is, to my knowledge, important is the trend. And I think that the trend in the last 6 or 8 years is clearly very positive. Certainly we would like to do better, but we must understand that things are difficult for everybody. I have been working at CERN since 1987. I have really a fairly large experience of dealing and working at CERN. And my candid appraisal of these years, in particular of the 30 years of recent membership of Spain to CERN, is that CERN membership has been a wonderful opportunity for Spanish science, but not only for particle physics. Education in general, industry, and innovation have also greatly profited from it. And I will add that CERN has also profited from having Spain among its member states, not only for financial reasons. The advent of highly motivated, competitive, and well-trained community is an important asset for the future of the organization. My final personal remarks, I think it's clear that we are going through very difficult times, but not only us. I read at the beginning of the week in the newspaper that 28,000 teachers have lost their jobs in the last 2 years. Because of that, I think that we have to refrain from dreaming. My Chinese coach tells me that when the night is long, there is plenty of time for dreaming. What we have to do is to try harder, to work better, to maintain credibility, good process of defining priorities, Be careful with the schedules. Be extremely careful with the cost and with the expenses, and educate society on the true value of basic research. In any case, I think that we better keep calm and with positive thinking and be honest and do good science. I profit now from wishing a happy birthday to CERN, and goodbye, good luck, and thanks.
Very good. Thank you, Manuel. So we arrived to the end. No, I will say as the King of Spain once he said, if I had a champagne glass, I would celebrate and I would wish the best for the future for CERN. So with this, let me close this important 60th anniversary session. Mr. Director.